I already have my snack. Go grab something for yourself. Today we're going to be answering questions about homeschooling, if this is your first go around at things, or even at teaching from home with your kiddos just during some questionable times right now. So go ahead and grab yourself a drink, a snack, and let's do it. If we don't already know each other, I'm Lauren. I used to be a kindergarten, second grade teacher and reading interventionist. Then I switched it up for myself to support teachers and other educators. And now I homeschool my own son. So I am sharing all of the tidbits of information that are swirling in my mind as a former teacher turned homeschooling mom, and I hope that I can bridge some gaps and fill in some things that you may be wondering jumping into homeschool for the first time, or even just refining some of your processes. Today we're going to be talking about some of the most common questions that people have jumping into homeschool, and I'm going to be sharing my teaching mind, my mommy mind, and everything in between to answer those questions to the best of my ability. And I would love for you to add your 2 cents in the comments below. I am filming this on my phone, so I have the questions on my computer, so I'm going to be glancing down at those every now and then if you're wondering. So our first question is, how do I know my child is retaining the information I'm teaching them or helping them with? Now, this is a really important question because what's the point of teaching your kid and giving them all of this information if they're not retaining any of it, or if it's basically like talking to a wall? Why would you have a conversation and continue carrying on with something if it's not working, or if the method in which you're giving information isn't vibing well with your child? Now, like I said, I used to teach kindergarten, so there are lots of boxes you have to check off in kindergarten. One of them is mastering paying attention, but a lot of the time what we think is paying attention is also not the case. And what I mean by that is, a lot of the time I would notice my students would be coloring, or even with my son, he can be playing while I'm talking to him, and I expect for him to stop what he's doing and give me his full attention. And I have often been surprised when he can tell me word for word what I said and he never made eye contact or even stopped what he was doing. Some babies are just like that, and that's fine. But if your child is showing that you've gone over information multiple times and they don't remember or are showing some confusion, that may mean you need to find exactly how they pay attention best, how they take on new information best, and link it to what's already in their mind. I have a cool little tool for you to use to find your child's learning style, and this is almost like just cracking the code a little bit to how they retain information, how they link new concepts to what they already know and what you've already been working on. This is like the secret ingredient to kind of finding your child's learning language and speaking it all the time. This can look like auditory, things that they can listen to. Maybe you read the story to them and then they answer questions. This can also look like watching a video. Maybe your child is a visual learner, or maybe your child learns best with hands-on activities. So that tool will help you to kind of see what's going on there. Now, if it is something that continues and you notice that your learner has issues retaining information all over the place, like even in your day-to-day lives, not just when you're learning, then you may want to take on some next steps to see if there is some kind of cognitive disconnect, and that's something that you can talk with your doctor about. All right, the next question: what amount of time is enough for my child to do school at home? Now, there are a number of opinions on this, and I aim for 1 to 2 hours of not specific instruction, like me giving a lecture to my child, but 1 to 2 hours each day for him to be learning or practicing concepts that are, building the skills that we're learning right now, or that we're working on right now. So it depends on your location, your curriculum, your needs and goals that you've set for your family and your learners. And then from there, it kind of varies. There are a number of programs that have, I don't know, just a number of requirements, I guess you would say, like timely requirements. But at the same time, if your child can work at a faster pace than some, then of course it's gonna vary. I will share some of the charts that I like and have also asked some of my teacher and administrative friends to share with me that their districts are requiring of them, only because that's kind of how my brain is wired and I like to compare. One thing that's important to remember though, with homeschool, it's not 8 hours that your child would be in a traditional school setting. So when you think of, oh, well, I would normally send my child to school at, by 8 a.m. and pick them up at 3 p.m. Those hours are filled with so many other things, not just learning. So be sure to take that into account when you're considering how much time to be spending doing instruction and learning time at home. Another thing that may help you with this, I have created a template, schedule, routine type of thing. I'll call it a routine because that's what we call it in our house. I have created a math 15 minutes and a reading or language arts 15 minutes. So that right there knocks out your two big concepts in only 30 minutes. So say that you want to do that in the morning, or 1 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. That already breaks up your time and covers 30 minutes of specific instructional learning time with your child. And you can also sprinkle in or add in some independent activities after that. The next question someone asked is, what style of homeschool program or curriculum is best and how do you pick? Okay, great question. That is, of course, one of the first things that people look into when they're considering homeschooling. So once again, this goes back to your family's preference, your learner, and you as the facilitator if you do choose a program where you will be, guiding / teaching your child. Because of the different requirements, the different formats, how they're set up, how your child will be involved in the learning, whether it's on the computer, whether it's a workbook, whether it's activities. Do what works for you, what works for your learner, what works for your family, all that jazz. That is, once again, the big ticket item of home education is you get to do what works for you, for your family, for your learner, for your needs, and what you feel is best and most beneficial for raising your little ones, and that's what this is about. Next, okay, I love this one because my son thinks that I'm the worst if I ask him to do things independently. For instance, he went and spent the night at my parents' house the other night and he took his tablet with him. And I told him, if you take your tablet, you have to make sure you do your 15 minutes of handwriting practice. 15 minutes, that's it. He usually gets done before 15 minutes anyway. And he was like, homework? Come on. So the next question is, should I give my child homework to continue working on outside of our time together? So personally, I don't think that it's considered homework, especially if you're taking into account the number of hours that you're spending doing instruction time and they're doing independent practice or even activities between the two of you. I don't really think that homework is beneficial unless it is helping them to build and continue working on a skill, not just being repetitive and serving as busy work. There's a definite difference, and I do think that if you assign something as homework, that also puts the responsibility on you to go back and check it. So there's also that to consider. So just something to keep in mind. That's my little 2 cents on homework. Is there an ideal time of the day to teach, and should the time we choose always stay the same? Now, for some people, it works that their schedule's the same every single day. They wake up, they eat breakfast, they get ready for the day, they do homeschool, they go play outside, they do, you know, blah, 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 blah. For our family, we love that we are out of that routine every single day. Yes, our schedule still looks the same, but we are not by the minute, by the second. And that is, once again, what works for us. Now, I think there is a definite benefit to having a routine, even if it falls at a different time within your schedule each day, or, you know, by the weeks, or however that works for you, especially around work and prior engagements and things like that. So our homeschooling time usually falls in the afternoon because my son likes to get up and kind of lounge around and wake up a little before we start doing anything. And I'm kind of the same way, so I don't want to put that responsibility on myself either, so I don't mind that he's like that. But if there are times that it's, you know, right before lunch and he says, hey, can we go do school? Absolutely. So even though when we do our homeschool routine may fall at a different time of day, when we do get to that time, it looks the exact same. You know, he comes in and gets started on our language arts activities, and then we do science or history and good citizenship, and then we do math last. So that routine doesn't change, and what we do during those times and like the, you know, processes within those different chunks of our subjects, that doesn't change. So it's easy to follow. It's easy for him to remember that, okay, we're doing this, so that must mean we're almost to math, which is his favorite. And then he knows that must mean we're almost finished after that. So still having some repetitive action, even though that group of actions moves from time to time, does help us to have a more lax schedule, if that makes sense, like throughout the day. There have even been times where I wasn't planning on doing school, like for instance on a Friday night, and my son will say, hey, can we go do school? And it was like 7:30. I didn't really want to because it was a Friday night and I was already in my pajamas and, you know, relaxing. I had shut down for the week, but because he was so eager to do it, why not? It doesn't, once again, there's something flying in the air. If you guys don't know, I have 6 animals. I have purifiers and diffusers and candles and this and that, and there is still bound to be hair flying around. We vacuum like at least, I'm not even joking, at least 4 times a day. I have a cordless vacuum, so it doesn't feel like it's that much, but oh my goodness. I can wear anything black, but if you guys can empathize with me, let me know. So this next portion of the video, I reached out to one of my best friends who is also a special education coordinator, and she's still in the school. So I reached out to her and asked her if she would answer a few of these questions that I've gotten from some of you guys. And I am blown away by the amount of detail that she gave. So I'm excited to share this information with you because it may, I hope, support some of you guys who are transitioning into home education and may have some concerns because you have a child with special needs or an IEP. Let's jump into it. Even if that doesn't apply to your child, some of these questions may still answer a few of the wonderings you may be having, so be sure to stick around till the end. The first question that I had for her was, how can people continue to support their learner if they're choosing to homeschool, but they previously had accommodations when they were in traditional school? Her response was, if you don't have a copy of your child's IEP, which if you don't know what that is, that's an individualized education plan, and their full evaluation or their full individual evaluation, then you have the option to call the school and request copies, and they'll even send you an electronic copy or the paper form. So that's also something to know, especially in these times. You can also request to have an annual review of your child's documentation in the district you live in. In the meeting, you can ask that the accommodations be explained to you further, and then that will of course help you working with them at home. So If they have a plan in place already, then you can request a copy of those accommodations, and then you can also move to, if there's anything that you don't really understand, you can ask for a review of those accommodations and in the district that you live in, and they can further explain how to break that down and help you support your learner at home. Okay, one tidbit that she added that I absolutely love, and this is what I'm talking about. She added so much detail in here that I was like, yes, thank you. Okay, so she said, remember, I can't get my words together. Remember, accommodations are not literal in all cases. Every student has strengths. It is appropriate to modify or interpret listed accommodations to your child's current settings. There are several websites dedicated to explaining accommodations and providing alternatives. So, ding, 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 great information, thank you. Your local education agency or LEA school has responsibility to you and your child until they graduate from high school. Let me say that again. Your local education agency school has a responsibility to you and your child until they graduate from high school. Cool. For example, oral administration of all text with discussion, start an audiobook. Okay, so she's giving us an example of one of those accommodations. Oral administration of all text with discussion. So if your child needs oral administration, once again, this kind of ties back to like the learning styles too. If your child works best from oral administration, then here's an example of what you can do. She said, start an audiobook and listen with your child while you're preparing a snack or during their literature and reading time. Ask them questions about a detail you heard with descriptive details, such as, who was Anne's friend with the bright rosy cheeks? That's from Anne of Green Gables. So it should be a quick response and begin the read again. So even if your child is not at the readiness to read, this is also a great way to start the process of listening to a story and answering comprehension questions. And that is just one way. If your child needs those accommodations that have been set in place for them to do their best with learning, then that is an example of how to support them at home. So it's not it's not rocket science, but some of the wording, yes, it's intimidating a lot of the time, but don't let that discourage you, because there are definitely resources out there and ways of supporting your learner at home. All right, let's see what the next question was. If I have serious concerns about my child retaining information, this goes back to what we were talking about at first, who can I speak with in my community other than my pediatrician? So like I was saying, if you notice that there are some retention issues, I'm freezing in here now. If there are some retention issues with your learner, not only can you reach out to your pediatrician, but now we're talking about who else can you talk with or look to for help. So not only is this community that we have right here on YouTube and on social media with all of these homeschooling moms, so supportive and informative for the questions that we have and the situations that we're in. I know there are lots of Facebook groups that may be more local to you. So once contact is a little more acceptable and usual again, that is also an option of people who can help to support you and grow with you while you dive into home education. So my friend's answer to this question, comprehension and retention typically go hand in hand. So that's also something to keep in mind. Comprehension and retention, so keeping the information and understanding the information, usually go hand in hand. There are local programs like Sylvan and Kumon, you may have heard of those, that tailor to your child's specific needs. And they support retention. So she said she suggests recording your child reviewing their notes or classwork, reading the questions aloud and answering, listening to it again later, as in the next day. That might work on their consistency. So consistency is also important, and it can be time consuming, but give a new accommodation time to become a routine. So that can be up to 4 to 5 weeks. So if you have just started something like a new routine, new schedule, or if you're just jumping into homeschool, give yourself an adjustment period is what she's talking about there. And I absolutely agree with that. You can't expect to get used to something or have it become a habit unless you've given it time to do that. So that's some great advice. If after several days it shows to be more of a challenge than expected, it's okay to explore a different approach or accommodation. So don't be scared to switch it up. If you notice that you're basically banging your head against a brick wall, don't do that to yourself. Definitely don't do that to your child, especially if you're noticing that they're struggling and it's not really helping them like you expected it to. What would be the biggest piece of advice you have for parents tackling at-home learning with their child with special needs? And here's what she said: consistency and patience. Absolutely 100%. I think those are at the top of the list of the parenting skills that we need to have. But she said it's valuable to practice both with your child and your approach to instruction. Some of us receive information with an appropriate processing speed and on occasion still struggle with understanding it. So only imagine what your child is going through if they struggle with processing. The processing of information is different for everyone, and it's okay to go back and review or teach in a simpler form or combine with other topics to help connect information. So of course, whenever someone's talking to you and they're discussing a topic for the first time and you're kind of like, what are you talking about? What? I have no idea what those words mean. If that is your reaction, of course they're gonna stop and they're gonna say, okay, remember when we did XYZ? It's kind of like that. And then your brain immediately goes, oh, okay, that makes so much more sense. The same type of mapping has to happen with your child. So if you notice that your kid is like, Mom, what? Sometimes you have to slow down and break it down in a different way first, and then use that as a building block to continue to dig deeper into a topic or concept. And I love that that is information that that's advice that she's also sharing with us. Developmental milestones are not the same as those implied academic milestones. Ooh, good one. Good tidbit. Okay, and then the last thing that we're going to talk about are apps and websites that may help you at home. So, Khan Academy, Learning Ally, those are free audiobooks. So once again, we talked about if you have an auditory learner who loves listening and retaining and getting information that way. Of course, YouTube and YouTube Kids, so you have a little bit more control over what your learner is listening to and doing. Read Theory, PhotoMath, and then some of the ones that you can pay for, Brain Pop Junior, those have really fun animated videos and quizzes and games that go along with those. And there's also some activities that you can print off. I am not quite sure, to be completely honest, and I know I should have looked into this before. I'm not quite sure if you can sign up for that as a single like family or if it has to be through a school. But I will get back to you on that and leave the information in the description below for you guys. And then any time that you have access, or I know in some of the apps that my son plays with, he has an Amazon Fire tablet. If you guys don't have one of those, I would highly suggest that, and I will link. My camera turned off, but that's okay. That's it for today's video. I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next weekend. If you have any questions of your own, you can be sure to leave them in the comments, and they'll be included in the next one. Something's like floating. I'm sure it's a hair. Anyway. Where was I?